I'm Insomniac, and this is the Heritor Winthrop Skeleton. Alright, before I dive into this review, a big shout out to Jim Berry for sending this in. A lot of the watches you've been seeing recently on this channel are from his collection. It's very cool of him to lend these for review. Some of them are quite interesting, including this piece. So let's dive right into it. The case on this piece is fairly nice and simple. It's all brushed stainless with the exception of a nice polished bevel that separates the lugs and carries on under the fixed bezel along the sides of the case and around the outer edge of the case back around the exhibition window, which is also polished. The sides of the case have a nice vertical linear brushed look to them, and the lugs are a good length and have a quick curve to them, which make the watch a good wearable size for 41mm. Around the outer edge of the case back, you'll find information about the watch lightly engraved into it. The crown is a good size, has an onion-like shape to it, and has a reasonably good grip for winding and setting the watch. The fixed bezel around the mineral crystal is probably the only thing about the case that I really don't like. It has this almost gear-cut angled texture to it, which in general I don't mind, but the machining of this pattern just looks okay. It doesn't exactly convey the air of elegance that I think Heritor was going for. Otherwise, it's a fairly nice case. The dial on this watch is interesting. First of all, with a watch like this, it's hard to just say the dial, because technically the dial, or dials in this case, are the small sections containing the hour, minutes, and seconds up here in the northern part of the watch. But you also have a partial dial above the hour and minute section, finished in black with a vertical line pattern. Then the rest is skeletonized. The issue with skeletonizing this dial is that the majority of what you see exposed other than the dual balance wheels is an unfinished movement bridge. If some attempt would have gone into finishing the bridge plate, I think it would have done wonders for this design. Otherwise, you see some of the jewels, a gear in the upper left hand side that does nothing in real time, and the stem gears at 3 o'clock. Back up at the sliver of black dial, you have a screwed down plate containing the brand name, and around the time sections you have little polished rings around those dials. The hour, minute, and second tracks are all printed white on black, and there's a good concentric circular pattern around the outer edge of the minute and hour dial. Last, you have the tiny hands. All three are tiny sword-shaped hands, with decent polishing applied to the outer edges, and believe it or not, all three hands have lume fillings inside. Overall, it's hard to quantify how good the quote-unquote dial is because there isn't much dial, but if we're considering the dial in this case to be everything under the crystal, it basically looks like two balance wheels with small subdials to show the time as an afterthought. The lume on this watch isn't much, both in terms of size and function. The hour, minute, and second hands all have lume filling, but the hands are so tiny that the lume-filled sections are minuscule, and what little lume filling there is doesn't last very long. Time at a glance is decent, depending on your eyesight. The issue here, despite the sharp hands and high contrast of the white printing on black dial, is the size of the dials that show you the time. Because they're tiny dials that play second chair to the balance wheels and the rest of the skeletonized portion of the watch, the time is easy to read if you look at it closely, but if you're trying to find the time quickly or if you don't have 20/20 vision and can't be bothered with straining to look closely at the tiny dials, it's not all that easy to read the time at a quick glance. The strap on this watch is a leather strap finished in black that doesn't have too much gloss, which I personally prefer. It has a faux alligator pattern to it, and the underside is done in a natural finished leather. Buckle is a great size and has the brand name well engraved into it, and is finished in a brushed steel that matches the case very well. The problem is with the quality of the strap. It's fairly thin and already shows some creasing from minimal wear. Despite looking good with the rest of the watch aesthetically, it just doesn't match the quality of the rest of the watch in terms of build quality. Last but not least, we have value. Now, the MSRP of this watch on Heritor's site is $1,400, and I must say, they have some serious balls even suggesting that made-up number for a watch with a mystery movement. At the very least, a serious watch buyer would want to know where the movement was made. And for $1,400, I think most watch buyers would actually want to know more than that. Is it an in-house movement? I'm sure it's not. Is the movement Swiss, German, Japanese, Chinese? If so, which company made it? I did some additional research online and found on a few forums that Heritor claims to use Japanese movements in their watches, but some of them are actually Chinese. But even then, the forums and other sites that I found that tell you that don't tell you which watches in their line possibly use the Japanese or Chinese movements, and then it doesn't break that down any further into which movements or brands from those two countries they source the movements from, so the whole thing's just a giant question mark. But luckily, $1,400 isn't anywhere near what this watch sells for. As of the time of this review, I found it on a few different websites for $349.99. For that price, I'd personally still be leery because I'd still want those movement details, at the very least what country the movement was made in, but maybe that's just me, and there is some value here for $350. It's a unique looking dress watch in a fairly standard size with pretty good wrist appeal and dual balance wheels as the feature. Now, depending on how much of a watch nerd you are, the dual balance wheel thing actually might be a huge turnoff for you because you know what they were actually going for, which is a tribute to the insanely unnecessary and also insanely expensive and collectible double tourbillon. But if you subtract the watch geek scrutiny and you appreciate the aesthetic, you like the dual balance wheels, and you have eyesight good enough to read the time on those tiny dials, it's a pretty cool watch. Is it worth $350? I have to give this section a right in the middle of the road score, because honestly, the movement details for this watch, outside of the watch nerdy aspect of wanting to know the movement specs and details, that really determines whether or not this is an underpriced gem or an overpriced hack. It really comes down to the movement in this case, and I just don't know what it is. Those details are not available from the company or really from any other site where I tried to look it up, so it is what it is. Well, again, a big shout out to Jim Berry for sending this in. Pretty cool and definitely a fairly unique piece. I enjoyed having it around the little while that I had it. If you have watches you'd like to send in to be reviewed here, email me at shoulditimethis@gmail.com. and I will tell you where to send the watches. They will be reviewed and sent back. Also, if you appreciate the work that's going into these videos and you would like some cool rewards, you'd like to see my videos 1 week early, a whole bunch of other stuff, sign up at the link at the top of the video description. There is a Should I Time This Patreon there where I could use your support. Okay, I will see you all next time.